Well, welcome back. Good Wednesday morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. I'm Maria Bartiromo, and it is Wednesday, March 25th. It is 7 a.m. on the button on the East Coast. I hope you're having a good Wednesday morning. We've got new information this morning. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte says allies are, quote, coming together to help the United States secure the Strait of Hormuz. So far, 30 countries have formed a coalition to help open this critical waterway and maintain the flow of oil. President Trump is looking at this as a priority, working to reopen the critical oil passageway as soon as this weekend. Reports say that the president is sending the 82nd Airborne Division to the Middle East to join the Marines to either assist in getting that strait open or do it themselves. Joining me now is U.S. Ambassador to NATO Matthew Whitaker. Ambassador, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. What can you tell us about our NATO allies and their support for this operation?
Well, good morning, Maria. Great to be with you. What I can tell you is, we've been in overdrive here diplomatically, pushing our allies, both here in Brussels and across capitals in Europe and in the Middle East, to convince everybody. Unfortunately, it took some convincing that this is more important to them than it is to the United States. I mean, we get very little, if any, oil through the Strait of Hormuz. It certainly is affecting, the oil prices in the United States. But that's one of the great things that President Trump was able to do, is to make America energy independent. And that independence obviously guarantees our supply. Now, we have allies that are finally stepping up. I think, from the time this conflict broke out, they were certainly non-committal to what they could bring to the fight or bring to help us. But, they have done things that I think goes sometimes unnoticed. We had several allies here in Europe and in NATO that were providing key and crucial basing, overflight, and access, that whether it's Suda Bay, where I was in Greece on the Isle of Crete, or whether it was, other countries, including Germany and France, that were providing our ability to prosecute this fight. So, there are key allies that are contributing, that are providing things. We just want more, and we need more, because even though President Trump has been very clear, Maria, that, we don't need this, it's good to act as a group of nations, because this is ultimately going to help everyone. And an Iran that does not have a nuclear weapon, that can no longer produce missiles at scale, that can no longer menace the region and this strait, I think is good for the world. And ultimately, the world needs to step up and participate.
So when did the Europeans get religion here, Ambassador? Because when the president first reached out for help, the comment from Germany was, quote, "This is not our war." And then 2 days after that, we see Iran sending a long-range missile to the Diego Garcia Island with obvious evidence that it does, in fact, have access to these long-range missiles that can actually have the potential to hit much of Europe.
Well, obviously, they found religion after we began explaining to them why this is crucial for them to be involved in their own interests. And I think, unfortunately, because the president wanted to have this be a surprise, and because of the way it was timed, it caught a lot of our European allies flat-footed. And, we have been working over the last year since we had the summit in The Hague to get our allies to be more capable, to buy more equipment, to think more offensively and defensively in their own interest and in the interest of the alliance. And I just think that they don't understand, or continue to maybe not comprehend, how absolutely dangerous this world is, how the United States of America is going to lead a free world, a world that has to confront these types of evil regimes like we see in Iran. And, obviously the president's language was very strong as it regards to NATO. It was buttressed by me here in Brussels every weekend, all week long, making sure that they are coming around. And I think we're seeing much progress in that regard. But at the same time, what's going to matter is not strongly worded statements. What's going to matter is them showing up with capabilities, whether that's minesweepers, frigates, and other assets in the Gulf and in the Strait.
We've been talking a lot about drone technology, Ambassador, and how the president wants mass production of kamikaze drones, of drones not just for security, but for the U.S. to be using lower-priced drones, the way we saw so prevalent in the Ukraine war. And do you have confidence that, in fact, you can stop the hostility coming out of Iran with those drones in the Strait as soon as this weekend?
Yeah, there are a lot of promising counter-drone technologies. I saw some of them being used in Ukraine when I visited in November of last year. But I've also seen what the United States of America and some of our startups and some of our companies can produce. And there is a lot of good things happening. It is certainly the #1 threat. And whether it's the autonomous sea or underwater vessels, or whether it's from the sky with the Shaheds and other drone technologies, I think we're going to have to invest a lot. And I've talked to my friend, Secretary Driscoll at the Army, about this topic, and I know he's moving as fast as possible. Some of this is just the bureaucratic nature of the Pentagon and adapting new technologies, and we're just going to have to break through that. I've been pushing very hard here at NATO, among our allies and within the United States military, to really move out on these, because there's no time to waste. We're seeing that play out right now.
Meanwhile, Russia is still on the march. New overnight, Russia launching a barrage of drones and missiles across Ukraine. The massive assault reportedly killed 4 people, injuring more than 24 others. The attacks caused NATO to scramble its military resources and jets in states neighboring Russia for potential response. Ambassador, what can you tell us?
948 drones in a 24-hour period. I don't see that as a strength, actually, by the Russians. That's because of the counter-drone technology we've seen Ukrainians deploy and their multi-layered air defense. It takes these massive assaults to even get anything through the air defense. And, you know, at the same time, at NATO, we do respond with F-16s and F-35s, and our air policing is very strong. But this is, to our earlier point, this is the technology and this is the innovation that we have to lead here with our allies to make sure that we can do this much cheaper, because it costs $25,000 an hour to operate one of these jets, and the munitions on them are hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, to take out ultimately drones that can be produced at a fraction of that. And we're going to have to bend that cost curve to our advantage. And I think that is what President Trump is making sure that the military is moving out on right now, because this is not theoretical anymore. This is real world, and we need to make sure we continue to be the best in the world on these technologies.
Yeah, and that's why over the weekend I spoke with the CEO of AeroVironment, the drone manufacturer, as well as the CEO of Skydio. We've got Adam Bry, the CEO of Skydio, on this morning as we talk about this new face of warfare. Would you agree with that it is a new face of warfare right now with this new use of those lower cost drones?
Yeah, and I had the chance to visit Skydio when I was doing a technology and innovation tour recently, and certainly, you know, the quadcopter drones and drone technology and how they're used on the battlefield is something we need to be ready for. It's not exactly how we're going to fight, and we're seeing that a little different right now in Iran versus Ukraine, because the way the United States fights is obviously with very sophisticated, technologically advanced systems, but we still have to be ready to counter the drone technologies, whether that's subsurface, on the water, or ultimately in the air. And I think we continue to develop these technologies. We have some great companies, including Skydio, that are doing fantastic things. Bullfrog has another technology. And I think we just need to make sure that we are forward-leaning as the United States of America, and that we also push our allies to innovate in this as well, because it can't just be the United States. It's got to be all 31 NATO allies that are bringing technologies and innovation to the table, and then bring it. The best will win those competitions, and then we'll all adapt and adopt those technologies so that we can be cutting edge and ultimately keep our soldiers safe, because we have the best military in the world in the United States, and we should be proud of that. It is awesome what they're doing right now in Iran and to Iran. I mean, we have prosecuted over 8,000 targets in the first 25 days of this war. I mean, that's tremendous. That each one of those is a capability that we have eliminated from Iran being able to deploy against the region and against our allies. And so great things are happening, but it's not without the brave men and women that serve in our military. And I'm so proud here at NATO to serve alongside them in my mission, but at the same time, just watching them is really incredible.
Ambassador, thank you. We appreciate you and, of course, our armed services and our military across the board. Thanks, Ambassador Matt Whitaker.